Hello and thank you for joining me. So next week is Dyslexia Awareness Week, and whilst I've talked about my own experiences as a severe dyslexic before, I thought it probably apt to do so again. Now when I was at school, dyslexia wasn't really a well-known thing, so I was lucky to get spotted. I couldn't really read or write at all at the age of 8 or 9, and my school was somewhat archaic, so we sat in form order with the bright kids sat in the back row, middling kids sat in the middle, and the less able kids sat in the front. And we'd move around depending on what lesson we had, but normally the kids stayed in their row, top, middle or bottom. I stood out as I went from top in maths to bottom in English and history, etc. And I then went from top in maths to bottom, which then made them look at what was going on with me. And they realised that the boy who had been sat next to me in maths had moved a few seats and he'd been reading me my questions. So without his support, I could no longer answer the questions. Now, because of this, I was lucky. I got spotted, I got sent to an educational psychologist, I got tested, is he just thick or is there something else going wrong? And I got specialist support, which taught me a different, but probably more complicated way, one that made sense to me and allowed me to overcome the challenges I faced in school and mask the differences so I could get by. Now, I saw my dyslexia as a disadvantage. I saw it as something I had to cover up and overcome, not just in order to fit in, but in order to get by in life. And this is how it was presented to me. There's a great TED talk by a guy called Dean Braginer called The True Gifts of the Dyslexic Mind. And the talk looks at the science behind the different ways of thinking and advantages they bring. He points out that before reading and writing became a stable benchmark to assess kids' progress in education, we learnt from watching and doing, from kinesthetic learning, and dyslexics excelled. Since then, the education system based on reading and writing has essentially locked out the 20% of the population that are dyslexic. In his talk, Dean quotes that in the States, while you have this 20% of the population dyslexia, a disproportionate amount, 60% of young offenders have dyslexia. Intelligent kids disenfranchised by a system that sets them up for failure. On the flip side, we can see that when dyslexic minds are empowered, dyslexics like Einstein, Picasso, Da Vinci, JFK, Richard Branson, Muhammad Ali, then anything is possible. Apparently 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, as are 50% of NASA scientists. Cambridge University research by Dr. Helen Taylor a couple of years ago not only expounds the case that developmental dyslexia even gives advantages, it argues that it's been essential to the human adaptive success. The research concluded that people with dyslexia are specialists to explore the unknown, which plays a fundamental role in the ability for humans to adapt to changing environments. She argues that deficit-centered view of dyslexia isn't accurate, but it's rather a cognitive trade-off between abilities and a bias towards things like discovery, invention and creativity. The theory is that our ancestors evolved as species because we had complementary ways of thinking, different but complementary ways of thinking, which enhanced humans' ability to adapt through collaboration. What is clear to me is that when you see those who approach challenges, who think differently as lacking something or being deficit in an area, then not only do we do them a disservice, we miss out on them as a society and a business. A huge delta of outcomes between that 60% of young offenders and that 40% of self-made millionaires. If we harness the different ways of thinking and embrace them, then we can not only support the people to get by, but we can unleash their genuine capabilities and brilliance, and we can all benefit from that. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend.